strange, odd, and downright shocking, the cleanliness habits of the Middle Ages were vastly different from what we know and accept today. This trip through the weird rituals and habits of medieval times will offer a captivating peek into the past, revealing the somewhat grotesque yet interesting methods of keeping clean. Number 1. Using urine for laundry. One of the more shocking cleanliness practices of the Middle Ages was the use of urine for laundry. Urine, primarily due to its ammonia content, was a popular choice for bleaching and washing clothes. The alkaline properties of ammonia acted as a powerful cleaning agent, helping to remove stains and dirt from fabrics. Families would collect urine in pots and leave it to stand until it reached the right potency. It was then mixed with water, and clothes were soaked in this solution before being scrubbed vigorously and wrung out. In many towns and cities, there were even public urine collection areas where individuals could deposit their contributions to the communal laundry efforts. Cloth manufacturers also used urine as part of their textile production process. Woolen fabrics were soaked in urine to soften and clean the fibers before dyeing. The ammonia in urine also helped to set certain dyes, improving the color quality of the cloth. While it might seem gross and unhygienic to us today, the use of urine for laundry was a pragmatic solution for the people of the Middle Ages. It was a readily available resource that provided an effective way of keeping clothes clean. However, it does underline the stark contrast between the cleanliness standards of that time and those of the modern world. Number 2. Powdered wigs to cover lice infestation. One of the most iconic fashion trends of the Middle Ages, particularly the 17th and 18th centuries, was the powdered wig, also known as a peruke. While today we may associate these wigs with fashion or status, one of their original purposes was a bit less glamorous. They served as a solution to rampant lice infestations. Personal hygiene was not high during this era, and regular bathing was not a common practice, contributing to frequent outbreaks of lice. Lice infestations were not just itchy and uncomfortable. They were also a health hazard, as lice could carry and spread diseases. The solution that many found was to shave their heads and instead wear wigs. The wigs could be deloused more easily by removing them from the head and subjecting them to various treatments like baking in an oven or dousing in a concoction designed to kill the lice. To maintain a fashionable appearance, the wigs were often powdered with a mixture of starch and fragrances to keep them looking white or off-white, a trendy color at the time. Some powders even included lavender or orange to help mask any unpleasant odors. While to us this practice might seem a drastic solution for dealing with lice, in the context of the Middle Ages, it was an ingenious adaptation to a common and irksome problem. Number 3. Bleeding as a cleanliness habit. In the era of the Middle Ages, a routine practice for preserving health and cleanliness was bleeding, based on the old medical idea of humors. The theory revolved around the idea that the human body contained 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Balance among these humors was considered critical for good health, and any disruption could lead to sickness. When a person was ill or felt unwell, it was thought that one of these humors was in excess. Therefore, bleeding was used to restore this balance, particularly when there was an apparent blood surplus. The procedure was pretty basic by today's standards. It involved cutting specific points of the body and letting the blood drain out, often using leeches. This was done in various settings, from monasteries and public squares to sick people's homes. Barber surgeons, known for their dual roles as hairstylists and health practitioners, performed these procedures. They had a variety of tools, including lancets, scarificators, and fleams, designed to pierce the skin and veins. However, bleeding was not risk-free. It could result in severe weakness, anemia, and even death due to heavy blood loss. It was not unusual for patients to faint during the process, and infection at the cut site was always a risk. The effectiveness of the practice was not questioned for centuries, and it was only in the late 19th century that it began to lose favor as medical science progressed and the humor theory was disproven. Bleeding, as a cleanliness practice in the Middle Ages, was a blend of medical practice, superstition, and ritual. It reflects the understanding and beliefs about health and cleanliness during this time, as strange as they may seem to us now. Today, it serves as a captivating historical example of how societies have navigated the complex concept of cleanliness throughout human history. Number 4. Public bathhouses and group washing. In the Middle Ages, bathing was a public social event, mainly carried out in communal bathhouses. Public bathhouses were common across Europe, acting as vital social centers where people of all classes came to clean, relax, and socialize. These places were more than just for cleanliness. They were essentially the leisure centers of the time, equipped with warm baths, steam rooms, and sometimes even providing food and drinks. The process of bathing was relatively simple. People would undress, store their belongings in a specified area, and then go to the bathing area, where large tubs of heated water were prepared. Often these baths would be filled with herbs and flowers to make the water smell good. People bathed together regardless of their social status and enjoyed the warmth and steam. In some cultures, special bath attendants would help bathers by scrubbing their backs and offering massages. However, as inviting as it may sound, these public bathhouses were not without their problems. The water was not frequently changed and was used by many before it was finally replaced. As a result, the water quickly became dirty, making it a breeding place for bacteria and disease. Sadly, with the onset of the plague and the rise of the church's influence, public bathing was associated with immorality and disease. Many bathhouses were closed, and the act of bathing itself became less frequent, replaced by the practice of washing only the visible parts of the body, such as the hands, face, and neck. Number 5. Absence of dental care and toothpaste replacements. Dental care in the Middle Ages was considerably poor compared to today's standards. There were no skilled dentists, and knowledge about oral health was very basic. People depended on barber surgeons for serious dental issues like tooth removal. However, despite this lack of proper care, people did try to keep their teeth clean. The main way of cleaning teeth involved using a cloth and water, sometimes with salt. Without toothbrushes, people would rub this cloth on their teeth to get rid of food bits and plaque. Some people would also chew on specific types of sticks or twigs with a frayed end to clean their teeth, a simple form of the toothbrush. A strange replacement for toothpaste was the use of ashes. Particularly, ashes of burnt herbs, burnt bread, and even burnt mouse heads were used to clean teeth. It was thought that these ashes had rough qualities that could help get rid of grime and plaque buildup on teeth. Additionally, powders made from the bones of certain animals were also used as toothpaste. It's worth noting that, despite the crude nature of these substances, they may have been somewhat effective due to their rough quality, enabling plaque removal. Number 6. The non-existence of toilet paper. Regarding bathroom hygiene, the Middle Ages had quite different practices from today. Toilet paper did not exist, and people had to use various alternatives for personal cleaning after going to the bathroom. One of the most common materials used for this purpose was just water and the left hand, which is why the right hand was used for greeting and eating. Besides water, other materials like hay, moss, and leaves were also often used. In richer households, old rags, wool, or even hemp were used for cleaning. These materials were usually soaked in water or vinegar for added cleanliness. A more comfortable but luxurious option was a sponge attached to a stick, often soaked in brine or vinegar. This tool, called a xylospongium, was shared among users and rinsed in a bucket of salt water or vinegar after each use. In communal toilet areas like monasteries or castles, a shared cloth, known as a gomph stick, was sometimes used. The stick, with a cloth tied to its end, was put in a central location, accessible to everyone using the facility. While these practices may appear unclean by today's standards, they were normal and accepted during the Middle Ages. These methods highlight the fact that societies adapt to the resources they have, and as strange as these practices may seem to us now, they were considered usual and effective back then. Number 7. The plague doctor's attire. The attire of the plague doctor is one of the most recognizable and creepy symbols of the Middle Ages, especially related to cleanliness and sickness. This unique outfit was made as a form of protection for those doctors courageous or desperate enough to treat patients during the bubonic plague outbreaks, also known as the Black Death. The plague doctor's attire was designed to cover every part of the body. It included a waxed overcoat, leather gloves, boots, and a wide-brimmed hat. The most notable feature, however, was the mask. Looking like a bird's beak, This mask was made to hold aromatic substances and straw that were believed to clean the air the doctor breathed, thereby protecting them from the miasma, or bad air, they thought was spreading the disease. The beak-like mask was filled with substances like cloves, myrrh, rose petals, or camphor thought to keep the plague away. The eyes of the mask were covered with glass, and the whole outfit was topped with a wide-brimmed hat, symbolizing their medical profession. As disturbing as it may seem, the plague doctor's attire represents an early attempt at creating personal protective gear. Even though their understanding of disease transmission was wrong, the outfit may have provided some protection by simply keeping the doctors physically distant and separate from the patients. Number 8. Groom of the Stool, a royal hygiene job. The groom of the stool was a unique and surprisingly prestigious role within the English royal court during the Middle Ages. This position involved attending to the king's natural bodily functions and maintaining his personal hygiene. Although it might seem distasteful by modern standards, it was a highly coveted job due to the intimate access to the monarch it provided. The groom of the stool, named after the stool that served as a portable toilet, was responsible for assisting the king in the privy. His duties included providing water for the king's hands before and after meals, helping him dress and undress, and taking care of the royal clothes and jewelry. Beyond these duties, the role of the groom of the stool was significant because of the unparalleled personal access to the king. The holder of this position often became a close confidant of the monarch and could exert considerable influence behind the scenes. As such, the role was usually given to a person of high birth, further elevating its status. Despite its unsavory aspects, the position of the groom of the stool highlights how personal hygiene was a communal and, in many ways, a social event during the Middle Ages, even at the highest levels of society. It serves as a reminder of how societal attitudes towards privacy and hygiene have evolved over the centuries. Number 9. Tossing waste out of windows. In the Middle Ages, waste disposal methods were quite different from what we are accustomed to today. One prevalent practice, particularly in crowded urban areas, was the disposal of human waste by tossing it out of windows. The lack of indoor plumbing and sewage systems meant that people had to dispose of their waste somehow, and often, the simplest solution was to throw it onto the streets. Chamber pots filled with urine and feces were emptied out of windows with a warning shout of "Gardez-le," a corruption of the French phrase "Regardez l'eau," which means "watch out for the water." This warning was supposed to alert passers-by to the imminent danger from above, though it was not always effective, and unfortunate pedestrians would sometimes be the recipients of these unpleasant showers. The waste discarded in this manner would accumulate in the streets, creating a very unhygienic and unsanitary environment. Rain would sometimes wash the waste away, but more often it remained on the streets, leading to an overwhelmingly foul smell and providing a breeding ground for diseases. Number 10. Miasma theory: bad air causes disease. The miasma theory was a predominant belief during the Middle Ages that proposed that diseases, particularly plague, cholera, and chlamydia, were caused by bad air, or miasma. According to this theory, the foul-smelling air, often associated with rotting organic matter and poor sanitation, carried diseases. This understanding of disease transmission influenced many aspects of medieval life, including hygiene practices. For instance, it led to the belief that strong odors could ward off disease, leading to the use of aromatic herbs and flowers in homes and public spaces. Number 11. Using herbs and flowers to mask odors. Given the lack of proper sanitation and the prevalence of open sewers, the Middle Ages was not the most fragrant of times. One way people dealt with the ubiquitous bad smells was by using herbs and flowers to mask them. Herbs with strong scents like rosemary, thyme, and lavender were popular choices. People would strew these herbs on the floors of their homes, and as they were walked upon, they would release their fragrances, masking the less pleasant smells. The use of herbs wasn't limited to homes. They were also used in public spaces like markets and churches. In fact, the practice gave rise to the term strewing herbs. Flowers served a similar purpose. Bouquets of fragrant flowers were carried around, especially by the upper classes, to serve as a kind of medieval air freshener. Number 12. Hygiene during childbirth. During the Middle Ages, childbirth was a perilous event. and maternal and infant mortality rates were high. Many of these deaths could be attributed to the poor understanding of hygiene during childbirth. There were no sterilization practices in place, and midwives often delivered babies with their bare hands, without washing them first. The birthing room itself was not kept clean to modern standards either, often containing various animals and many other people. Despite these challenges, there were some attempts at ensuring cleanliness during childbirth. It was common for a woman in labor to be bathed before she gave birth, although the primary intention of this bath was to provide comfort rather than cleanliness. Garlic was often used in birth chambers as it was believed to offer protection against evil spirits and infections. Similarly, the umbilical cord was often tied off with specially prepared threads, such as those soaked in oil or fat, as a form of rudimentary antisepsis. Number 13. Animal dung in medical practices. Another surprising aspect of hygiene in the Middle Ages was the use of animal dung in medical treatments. This unusual ingredient was used in various remedies, believed to have curative properties. Cow dung was frequently used in poultices and salves to treat wounds and burns. The rationale behind this was that the dung would help draw out toxins and heat from the wound. Similarly, pigeon dung was thought to alleviate baldness when mixed with oil and applied to the scalp. Another common belief was that dog dung could cure sore throats and tonsillitis when applied externally to the throat. It was also used in ointments to treat a variety of skin conditions. Nonetheless, they serve as a stark reminder of how far medical science and hygiene practices have come over the centuries. Number 14. Fasting for purification. Fasting, the act of abstaining from food and sometimes drink, has been a part of many cultures and religions for millennia. During the Middle Ages, it became an integral part of the Christian religious practices prevalent in Europe, serving not only as a means of demonstrating piety, but also as a method of physical and spiritual purification. Fasting was often associated with the idea of cleansing one's body and soul. The Church prescribed certain fast days throughout the year, the most notable being the period of Lent, the 40 days leading up to Easter. During this time, individuals were encouraged to abstain from certain types of food, typically meat, dairy products, and eggs. This abstention was seen not only as a test of discipline and devotion, but also as a way to purify the body. In addition to these annual fasts, there were weekly fasts as well. Wednesdays and Fridays were typically days of fasting in honor of the betrayal and crucifixion of Jesus. The dietary restrictions on these days were often less stringent than during Lent, but they nonetheless served as regular reminders of one's faith and the importance of spiritual cleanliness. Number 15. Unusual beauty routines as hygiene practices in the Middle Ages. Perceptions of beauty and hygiene were closely intertwined. However, many beauty routines that were considered part of maintaining good hygiene would be viewed as strange or even harmful by today's standards. These practices provide fascinating insights into societal standards of cleanliness and beauty during this period. One popular beauty regimen among women was the use of lead-based cosmetics. White skin was highly prized as a sign of beauty and purity, as well as a marker of wealth, indicating that one did not need to labor outdoors. Women would apply a mixture known as Venetian ceruse, made from white lead and vinegar, to their faces to achieve a fashionable pale complexion. Notably, Queen Elizabeth I of England was known for her use of this cosmetic, leading to the term the Elizabethan look. Another unusual hygiene practice was the use of small scented bags known as pomanders. These were worn around the neck or waist and were filled with aromatic herbs and spices such as cloves, lavender, or nutmeg. The purpose of the pomander was to mask any unpleasant body odors, as regular bathing was not a common practice during this period. The scent of the pomander was also thought to purify the air around the wearer and protect against disease. Hair removal was another prevalent beauty routine, especially among women. It was not only the hair on the head that received attention. Medieval beauty standards considered a high forehead desirable, leading many women to pluck or shave their hairlines to create the illusion of a higher, broader forehead. Eyebrow shaping was common as well, with thin, arched eyebrows considered the height of beauty. Oral hygiene was also an important part of medieval beauty routines. Tooth care was rudimentary by modern standards, but people did use certain methods to clean their teeth and freshen their breath. Sage leaves were used for rubbing on the teeth and gums for their cleansing properties. Chew sticks, thin twigs with frayed ends, were used much like we use toothbrushes today.